This is Stephanie Moore. Welcome to my very humble beginnings of my YouTube channel. I'm here in sunny Florida. I have set up this channel as a sort of response to my students back in New Jersey asking me to please tape something for them as they're missing our regular classes that we have. We're here in New Jersey or in Florida on quarantine, self-isolation. So I'm not able to teach my regular classes back in New Jersey. So this is for them. Today I'm offering and for anybody actually, today I'm offering a Yin class. Yin is a unique class that offers very long extended holds and stretches in specific poses that are meant to get into the deep fascial connective tissues of the body. So the poses are held for between 3 and 5 minutes, and they're meant to bring you to an edge. So in Yin Yoga, the edge is a feeling of slight discomfort, but not pain ever, and no sharp shooting pains or electrical pulses, but an edge where you feel as though you really need to concentrate on your breath and follow your breath in order to stay at that edge. It is at that edge where we break down connective tissues and really help release and open, and where we gain and increase our flexibility, which is very, very different from, say, after you've done a workout and you quickly just pull your leg in for a quad stretch and then release it down. Very, very rarely are you getting a true stretch in that case. So we're looking for a deeper sort of stretch to increase flexibility, but not only that, to move ourselves into more of a parasympathetic nervous system, coming out of fight or flight, which is, I think, at this time during the coronavirus, what we're all really, really searching for in our lives is a time where we can feel a little bit more grounded, a lot less anxious or fearful of the future. And Yin Yoga allows us to come into the moment and be present, which can really help with the feelings that we're having of overwhelm right now. So I always love to start my practice with a little bit of breathing. Today I'd really like to offer a 3-part breath. It's called Dirga breath. It just involves an expansion of the diaphragm, an expansion of the chest and upper collarbones, and then an expansion or the ribs, and then an expansion into the collarbone. So it's sort of a 3-part. It's taking a 1 inhale but breaking it down into 3 parts. So it kind of looks like this. Inhaling deep into the low belly, and then inhaling so that the ribs spread apart, and then inhaling into the throat or collarbone. Hold at the top, and then release the same way down. Chest releases, ribs come in, and diaphragm pulls towards navel. So we'll try that together. Inhale, diaphragm. Inhale, ribs expand. Inhale, chest. Hold. Exhale, chest. Ribs draw in. Belly bone draws to spine. And then at your pace. And one more like that. And then gently flutter your eyes open. And just notice the difference that you feel in your body after having taken a few deep and conscious breaths. And at any point in your day or your life when you feel like you could use some centering or some grounding, remember that 3-part breath. Low belly, ribs expand, up to the chest, hold, and then released in the opposite manner. So the first pose that we're going to take today is called Supta Baddha Konasana, or reclined bound ankle pose. I have these really inexpensive blocks that I got down here from the Five Below store. If you can pick up some blocks, that's ideal for your Yin practice. However, you can use a couple of hardcover books, a firm sofa cushion, anything that might help support you in propping you up in these poses. So you'll take the soles of your feet together. You'll let the knees come apart. You'll place the blocks underneath your knees, giving some support to the inner parts of your knees, your inner groin. And then you'll slowly release yourself down to the mat. And then maybe you'll need to scoot yourself a little bit forward to feel that support. If it feels better for you, you can take the toes away from your groin, or you can draw heels in towards groin, whatever feels better for the release of your inner groin and your outer hips. And then really allow yourself to become so heavy here in this pose. So, you know, wherever you've come from, whatever part of your day, whatever you're doing right now, there's a good chance you're still thinking about that, what you were doing, what you have to do. And maybe you can just bring yourself to your mat here. You can sort of land on your mat. So consciously letting the outside edges of your feet become so heavy into your yoga mat. And then the outside edges of your calves, the outside edges of your thighs, just sink heavily into the support of those blocks. And then your hips, your hip points, your sit bones sink, giving into gravity. The tailbone and all the vertebrae of the spine, one at a time, just drop down heavy, supported. The shoulder blades, maybe you walk them together towards the spine a little bit, let them kiss in towards the spine, and then take them down a little bit so that your shoulder tips are a little bit further away from the ears. And then the arms can just rest here on the hip points, or if you'd like to get into your shoulders, go ahead and take the arms up and overhead and perhaps grab opposite elbows to get into a beautiful shoulder stretch here. And then if it really feels like you're incredibly supported and you have no edge, you can draw the heels in a little bit closer to the groin. For me, I'm going to move the blocks out of the way because I'm quite open in my hips. So I actually don't need the support of the blocks. And if I let my knees draw a little bit closer towards the earth, I come into more of that edge, more of that yin stretch. And then I'll just keep track of the time for us here. And I'll keep prompting you every so often to come back to your breath. So now, maybe even after having taken those few deep breaths that we took at the beginning of practice, can you notice where your breath originates from now that you've lied down? Has it come high into the chest? Is it short and shallow again? And how can you draw the breath from low in the belly? So on your inhales, how can it come from so deep in the low belly so that when you inhale, the low belly inflates? And when you exhale, the low belly draws back to the spine. You consciously just watch the inhales and exhales of your own breath, the ebb and flow of your own breath. And then maybe allow yourself to wander to a place, a happy place. For me, it's always a beach. The sun is always shining and warming my skin. The sand is always warm beneath me. This helps me just to become so soft and heavy into the earth, not gripping or holding any tension. I remind myself in this pose, especially in my inner groin, to constantly breathe into the inner groin, as if all the muscles of the groin could just give up their need to hold or tense or grip at all. They could just sigh a relief of working. Outer knees feel so heavy towards the earth. The back of our skulls feels so heavy. And we start to really come into this practice of sinking, giving up the need for doing or being. And instead we just are in this moment. We're so present. If your thighs have begun to tense at all, see if you can allow them to become heavy. If there's any pain or discomfort, maybe the blocks can come up on a higher level to help support the inner groin a little bit more. You decide what you need in order to keep the edge but avoid the pain. And then from here we'll find 5 deep inhales and 5 deep exhales at your pace. So really consciously filling up the lungs and then slowly letting the exhale seep out of your nose, constricted throat. When we draw out our exhales longer than our inhales, we really tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest. And we really tell our bodies that we're safe, that we're calm. And that's when all those feel-good hormones start to excrete, like serotonin and dopamine. And that's when all of the beautiful repair starts to happen internally in our bodies. If you've had the 5th inhale, go ahead and release your arms if they were over top. Take your hands to the outside edges of your legs and just gently use the strength of your hands to pull your inner knees towards midline. And then once they pull your feet out to the edges of your mat and let your knees knock in for constructive rest pose. Now we're finding this beautiful internal rotation of the hips to counter stretch all of that external rotation we've just done. And then once you feel like there's a good balance there, go ahead and extend the legs out nice and straight. And release the arms up and overhead. Take a full body stretch. Let the chi come back into the body. Like you're waking up for the 2nd time today. That feels so good. I can feel the blood rushing all up and down the meridians. And then pull your knees into your chest. And then we're going to come into some spinal twist. So taking the feet back as wide as your mat and letting the knees knock in. So feeling that internal rotation one more time. Taking any blocks out of the way on the right side for a moment, holding onto it. And then letting the knees just rock over to the right side. So just keeping them at the edges of your mat, letting them rock over onto the right side. But then taking your right ankle and letting it land on top of the left knee. So it's a little bind, helping get the inner left a bit closer towards the earth. And then if you need that support underneath the right knee a little bit, because it's just too much, if you're too far away from the earth, then you can go ahead and place the block under your knee if you can still get your edge. So relax the feet, relax the head, relax the body, and just notice that beautiful stretch that you're now getting in through the hip flexor, in through the psoas, in through the outer hip. And then you can take the arms to a cactus or goalpost arms, and then you can take the neck or the face or the gaze over to the left if it feels okay on your neck. So in this pose, all of your breath is going to go to that hip flexor, that left quadricep. Anywhere where you're feeling the pull of the opening, the flexibility in the muscle, in the tissue, take the breath there. If the jaw begins to clench, become so aware of when your jaw starts to clench, especially because we're working the front fascial plane. All of the muscles in the face, the masseter muscles, all of the muscles that involve clenching are associated with the front fascial plane. So when we clench our jaw, it affects the whole front body and it decreases our ability to get the flexibility throughout the whole chain. So let there be space between the upper teeth and the lower teeth. And then even the tongue will want to search for somewhere to press, usually the roof of the mouth right behind the two front teeth. So let the tongue relax too. Tell it to just sag in the bottom half of your mouth. Just pull there heavily. If the shoulders start to creep towards the ears, just wiggle them down. Let the mat support them down and away from your ears. Eyes are closed heavily. You're just allowing the breath to just come and go like ocean waves. Maybe it travels all the way up that left leg on the inhale and all the way down the outside edge of that left leg on the exhale. And already your mind may be frantically racing like, oh, I've got so much to do and this is so slow paced and what's actually really happening here. But I promise you that this work is so elemental for the opening of our bodies in a way that we can't even understand. In society, the way we sit so often is sitting is becoming the new smoking. Our bodies are calcifying, our hip joints, our hip flexors are becoming so tight and tense that it's causing us to lean forward. It's causing us a ton of low back pain. And we can't get into the deep, deep tissues unless we hold these poses with intention and at this edge. So if you're actually no longer feeling an edge because you've been here long enough, begin to tuck the pelvis under. So engage the left glute and begin to push through the hip point and draw it over to the right side of your body. You feel a little bit more in that hip flexor. You can even press the right ankle on top of the outside edge of that left knee and draw the inner edge of the knee in a little bit more. Just refinding an edge. Everybody take a deep breath in and sigh it out. And we'll have 5 more deep breaths, your time, your pace here. And on your last inhale, slowly let the right leg come off the left. And with so much ease and intention, take the gaze up towards the ceiling and let the whole body just rotate, starting from the spine back up to center. Be so gentle and so intentional with your body as it moves. Just find yourself repositioning yourself back in line. Extend the right leg, extend the left leg. Reach the arms up and overhead. Find that full body stretch one more time. Let the chi run back into the body. Let it especially run and circulate around that hip point. And notice how your left leg feels compared to your right leg now. Go ahead and bend your knees back. Take the feet as wide as the mat. Take the block out of the way if it's in the way. And then just while keeping the feet exactly where they are, let everything drop over to the left side. Keep the right shoulder blade tacking down. And then once everything's dropped down as low as it can, take the left ankle and let it just rest on top of the outer edge of that right knee. The hands come back into their cactus, and then the gaze can come over to the right here now, stretching into the neck. This is completing this sort of spinal twist. So I just noticed that I was holding my left knee way off the earth. So make sure that you're not holding any tension in that left thigh. And if it feels like no matter what you do there's tension, go ahead and place a block under it for now so that you can let it relax. Sort of send it a signal so that it doesn't need to grip or hold. And then you can kind of trick it later by pulling it out. Close your eyes. Find that edge. And breathe. I'm super fortunate here in our holiday house in Florida to have this beautiful view to look at every morning. One of the reasons we bought this property was because it backs onto this beautiful lake where there is always a plethora of wildlife. Everything from great blue herons to egrets to fish jumping to alligators. Right now the lake is so still, so beautiful. There's an exact reflection of the forest into the lake. The sun shining on top of it. And this tree that we have in front of us is now dead because we have a population of wild boars in the forest that have eaten all the roots, which I think is hilarious. So that will be coming down, and maybe that will make for a nicer view, who knows. Notice if your jaw's begun to clench. And see where you can soften in your mind and in your body. Watch your breath. Are you holding it? How can you make it so deep, so complete, so calm? And if you're not finding your edge, how can you come a little bit deeper into that edge? Can you bring that inner right knee a little bit closer towards the earth while keeping that right shoulder blade down? Can you drop the outer left knee a little bit closer towards the earth? Can you take the right hip point and just push it away as you tilt your tailbone under, tuck your pelvis under to get a little bit more of a stretch into the hip flexor here? All tiny little micro movements, but that make a huge difference into the way the muscles and tissues are responding to these deep, long holds. And taking 5 conscious, long, deep breaths now. You know, there's this beautiful quote that says, if you can't sit in stillness with yourself, how do you expect to present yourself to the rest of the world? So in these moments of stillness, especially in self-isolation, when we've been in our homes now for over 14 days, we really have to be so conscious and so aware of the thoughts we carry in our minds when we are still. And when we become conscious, when we become an ego observer instead of an ego doer, we can really be curious about those thoughts. Like, why are these specific thoughts coming up over and over again? 2 more deep breaths. And that's where the inner work can start, right? Like for me, if I was always wondering, am I a good enough teacher to be on YouTube? You know, like why would I struggle with my self-worth? Why would that be something that I ask myself, or that's a constant thought? And I would do my work around that, you know? Why don't I feel good enough? At what point in my life did I first not feel good enough? These are the kinds of great things that can happen during Yin. If you like doing inner work like me, go ahead and take that left foot off the outside edge of the right knee. Drop it down to the outside edge of the mat. Slowly roll back to center. Take the feet out wide, drop the knees in, find that constructive rest pose again. Sometimes people call it knee knock pose, so I sometimes confuse the words altogether. And then this time we'll just windshield wiper, just swish the knees from side to side. Just no real effort, just let your torso, let the knees just fall from side to side. The torso moves and then the knees just follow. So my eyes are closed, but I'm getting this really neat sort of swirly pattern behind my eyes, behind my mind's eye. I love when that happens. And then take the legs down again, find the full body stretch, let the chi rush in after compressing the hip points for so long. Stretch, point the toes away, reach the fingertips up behind you. And then totally opposite, pull the knees into the chest, make yourself into a little ball. Maybe pull the face up to the knees. Sort of stopping the flow. And then just rock and roll up your spine. Give yourself a little massage of your spine. So take the feet way back behind you and then let them just balance right above your mat. Sorry for the weird talking as my back slammed down. And then just hover a little bit, cross the ankles. And then just sit in easy seated pose and just fold over a little bit. Give your low back a little bit of a stretch. So maybe you'll use your blocks. If your low back's super tight, you might want to just use your blocks to just rest. And then change the opposite foot in front. And then lean lean forward. And then move the blocks out of the way. We're just going to use our core, roll right over our crossed ankles and come into what's known as tabletop pose. So just walking back a little bit. I don't want the music to be too loud. So finding tabletop. So tabletop is knees underneath the hips and wrists underneath the shoulders. The toes are tucked a little bit. And we'll just rock back and forth. Just getting into the feet a little bit. And then we'll open the knees nice and wide, take the big toes to touch. And we'll just find a child's pose just for a moment, just to stretch out the back. Relax the body down. And I just love child's pose for so many reasons. It gets into this beautiful stretch into the upper back. Gets into a beautiful stretch into the hips, the low back. Stretches the tops of the feet. If you walk the hands to one side and then the other, you can get a side body stretch. But what I love more than anything is it always feels so introspective towards me. Because I bring my biceps towards my ears and I kind of muffle out the noise. My third eye is attached to the ground. I can really tap in sometimes to thoughts and feelings here that might not be available to me if I was so open and vulnerable facing the world. Find a deep breath in and exhale it out. Press into the hands, go ahead and walk up. We're just going to find a lizard pose here. So you're definitely going to want to use your blocks if you have tight hips. So I'm going to just line mine up at the beginning of the mat, the top of the mat here. And then take the right leg out behind you. Let's start with the left leg so you can see my alignment here. Take the left leg out behind you and just move it around a little bit. Just open up the hip a little bit, even though we've already done that. And then take it out behind you, let the toes face down, push back through the heel. And then sort of use your hip strength to bring it out and over. And use your core strength to place it up beside your right hand. Let it come forward, help it forward a little bit. Take your blocks on either side of your feet. And then what you want to find is this 45-degree angle in your left thigh and your right thigh actually. So you're getting into the right hip flexor and you're getting into the outside edge of the left hip. So what we want is some glute engagement on the right side, because what we don't want to do is just sag into this right hip flexor. So that's easy to do if you're hypermobile. So keep a little bit of engagement. So maybe reach back and just feel that you have a little bit of glute engagement in that hip. And then make sure that the knee is over the ankle. Walk it forward if you need to. Just see how that feels. Come up onto your blocks. Let the head be nice and heavy, just looking forward, maybe an inch or two above your toes. Take a deep breath in and exhale into your lizard pose. So this is modification number 1. Or maybe you'll even want to be even higher depending on your flexibility. So see where you need to go in order to feel that stretch. The main stretch is going to be into the hip flexor on the right side. That is going to be the one that you're really going to feel. But you'll also feel something into the hip as well. I happen to be very flexible, so in the hip, so that the blocks aren't necessary for me. So for me, lizard pose looks more like I take my hands to the inner arches of my left foot and I drop my hands on the inside. So that's another option. So you can take this and see if that allows you to feel your edge. And for me, this still doesn't allow me to feel my edge. For me, I need to come even deeper into this pose. So what I like to do in order to get that deeper stretch into my hamstring is I like to come off of the right knee and just push my foot back. Let it slide down the yoga mat a little bit and then drop more onto the top of my quadriceps. And then I'm able to drop down onto my forearms. And this really allows me to get into the outer hip now. Now I can feel the stretch in my hip. I couldn't feel it before, but now I can. So this is where I will take my pose. So I'm trying to draw the collarbones forward a little bit, and I'm trying to draw the shoulder blades back on my back a little bit. So when I teach this class, when I teach this pose in class, I'll often see this as I look around class. And what I tell my students is, try not to be a depressed lizard. Be a proud lizard. So bring your heart space forward. If you come into an edge that's too much, right, then just come up out of it a little bit. Take one of the progressions or regressions out of it so that you can come to a place where you still find an edge, but you're not in pain. And then if you started to tighten the muscles around your eyes or around your mouth, see if you can soften those. And then the jaw, make sure that that's not clenched. And the shoulders aren't up by the ears. You're pushing into the mat and allowing a lot of space between the tips of your ears and your shoulders. You have the whole left foot onto the mat, but the knee can come out, just trying to intend for the big toe to stay down. And if any of you watching are super flexy yogis and you want to reach back and grab the top of the left foot and come into a twisted lizard, you can do that. You might want to drop down onto the forearm and then take the gaze up to the sky. So when you come into twisted lizard, you get deep into a quad stretch. And the hip flexor and the outer left hip. Find 5 more deep breaths here. Slowly release the foot. Slowly tuck the toes under if you didn't have them. If you're back in the original pose, you're just going to tuck the toes under and you're going to step the right foot back to meet the left. You're going to find yourself back in tabletop position, and then we're going to sit back on tucked toes. Take your blocks with you. So for anybody that's never done this pose before, you're definitely going to need these blocks. We're getting into the plantar fascia, which is something that you might not ever have stretched in your whole life. And your fascia might be very, very tight, especially if you wear hard shoes all the time. But this is something that's integral in order to avoid plantar fasciitis. And if you've ever had it, it's excruciatingly painful. If you can come off the blocks, you can come off the blocks and go ahead and sit on your tucked toes. You can take the arms back behind you. I feel like I need a good shoulder stretch today, so I'm just taking the heels of my palms together. If you can't keep the webbing of your fingers together, and then just pull apart so that you can draw your shoulder blades down and in towards your spine. And then maybe you take the gaze up, find a little bit of heart opening, back bend here. That just puts more pressure into the feet. Don't hurt yourself, and then release, come forward, and we'll take lizard on the other side. So walking the blocks forward. And this time we're going to take the right leg back out behind us, and we're going to find that really nice extension, toes pointing down, and then pushing out through the heel, and that little hip circle. And then bringing the knee in towards the using the core, and then stepping it down, and just helping it forward, so that we have that nice alignment, knee over ankle. And then stepping back and finding that 45-degree angle in the right thigh, 45-degree angle in the left thigh. And then deciding where you need your blocks here so that you can feel that stretch into the left hip flexor and the outer edge of the right thigh, right hip. And if your knees are cranky, right, just go ahead and grab a pillow or a blanket or a towel or something to put underneath your knee if it feels uncomfortable just having it on your yoga mat. Maybe the blocks come down. And for me, I still need more of an edge, so I will move the blocks aside and I will come onto my hands, onto the inner edge of my right arch. So there are birds on my music, and there are birds chirping all around me. So I've got birds in stereo today. It's quite magical. Noticing the jaw and the face, letting everything soften and relax. Maybe a gentle smile can come to your face, noticing that we're nearly done. For me, I'm going to drop down to my forearms now. I'm not going to drop my head, right? I'm going to keep my shoulder blades retracting in towards the spine. So there's retraction and protraction of the scapula or the shoulder blades. Retraction is pulling into midline. Protraction is flaring away towards the armpits. And then maybe reaching back for that foot. I really feel like a nice quad stretch, so I'll come into a twisted lizard. Just spinning my right lung towards the sky here. This is like a 3-for-1. It's like a quad stretch, a hip flexor stretch, and an outer hip outer hip stretch. You know, when the world is this calm and this peaceful, it seems like there couldn't possibly be anything wrong in the world. And yet there's so much sadness and fear, chaos in the world right now. I read that in India, a spotted type of leopard that hasn't been seen since 1900 was out roaming the streets. And I thought that was so beautiful. It would be great to know that some of the endangered species might somehow be rediscovered. If you have the mind, release it. Slowly come back up out of your pose. Draw the right knee back in line with the left. And this time we'll find a closed knee child's pose. So tucked under, but just go ahead and push the mat away, take the hips towards the heels, and then drop the crown of the head down onto the mat. Sweep the hands around if you can, just to get that gentle pressure on the head. It's a form of an inversion. Keep it more to the center of your head and let the palms just face up. If you'd like to go into rabbit pose, you can reach back a bit further, grab and cup your own heels. Take the crown of the head close to the knees and then push up, lift the hips away from your heels. It's a beautiful stretch for the upper back. Release the hands down. And then take the knees wide as you can. Let the tops of the toenails come down and then just sit back. Sort of wide-kneed hero's pose. Not even sure if this is the pose or not. And for our last pose, I've saved the best for last. The last pose is going to be frog pose. Everybody's favorite pose. Not really. So I think the best way to show it is to come facing towards you. And I'm going to use my blocks for my forearms. So frog pose, the way we set up is you come with your knees wide on your mat. So keep walking your knees as wide as you can on your mat. And then you're going to take your feet wide. So you're going to point your toes away from midline. And then you're going to simply drop your chest down towards the floor. You might need blocks, so you might not even be coming anywhere near me where I am right now. And coming up on blocks might really, really serve you here. So for me, I'm going to try to keep pushing my knees out a little bit further. I haven't done frog for a little while, so I'm not sure how deep I'll be able to get. It's one of those poses that I don't think anybody really likes this pose because it's so uncomfortable on the inner thighs, but it's necessary because all day long we're just going forward. Our hips are going forward, and we very rarely externally rotate our knees. We internally rotate them to cross them, but very rarely do we externally rotate them. So we get very, very tight in the inner groin. So this is one of those poses that you just kind of have to get through. So if it serves you, you can maybe drop down onto the ground. I'm going to take my forehead down onto a block. I'm going to keep inching my inner knees away from one another. I'm going to keep inching my inner toes away from each other. And the tendency here is to sort of come forward because that feels easier. Keep pushing your hips back. That's where you will get the true stretch. And for here, you really do just need to drop your shoulders away and find that happy place. You're just going to need to breathe. And so I'm telling my toes to relax. I'm telling my inner knees to stop gripping. I'm drawing my shoulders a little bit away from my ears. I'm rolling my forehead a little bit on this block, getting in touch with my third eye again. And I'm just watching my breath, the ebb and flow, like waves rolling into the ocean, shore, and then pulling away. Notice your inner thighs and see if you can ask them to relax on your breath. Lower back softens, shoulders come away from the ears and just sag towards the earth. The eyeballs heavy in their sockets, the forehead soft. No tension in the jaw, the shoulders. Everything just giving into gravity and settling heavy to the earth. It's just about the breath. How can you come into the breath and meet the edge with just subtle curiosity? Five more deep breaths. Big breath in. This is our last pose. Complete breath out. And on your last exhale, this is the hard part. You're going to place your hands underneath your shoulders and walk your toes in towards midline. So your toes start to meet, and then you're going to press up through your hands and then gently walk one knee in and then the other knee in and then one knee in. Try not to do it all at once. It will be so painful. And then just sit on your shins. So let the toenails come down and just sit on your shins. Just notice how that feels. The body tends to start to feel sort of buzzy and alive after the stillness of an intense pose like that. So let that just happen. Swing the legs to the right and the hips to the left and just drop down onto your mat. We're going to come into Savasana now. So if you like to have blocks underneath your knees to support your low back, go ahead and grab those now. I'm going to lie back in Savasana. And if you want to find that full body stretch one more time, reaching the arms up overhead. Taking a big stretch in. And a big stretch out. And setting up for Savasana, letting the arms come far away from the body. Walking the shoulder blades in towards the spine, letting the feet come far apart. Letting the toes face out and the pinkies draw towards the earth. Rock the head from side to side. And then feel your toes just soften, hang. The heels of your feet so heavy into your mat. Your calves, backs of the knees, your thighs. As though the muscles, the quadriceps, could just melt away from the femurs. Your hip points, your sacrum heavy. Each vertebra of your spine articulating down one at a time in towards the support of the earth. the skull. The shoulder blades so heavy, maybe walking in a little bit closer towards one another. And that little pillow of flesh in between supporting your back. The palms face up and the fingertips curl in. And then you rock the head from side to side. Just releasing the mind. And then maybe take your tongue and just run it along your upper teeth and then your lower teeth. And take a swallow so that you can release your throat. Let the teeth part and let the upper teeth just move away from the lower teeth. Let the tongue hang in the bottom half of the jaw. The cheekbones soften. And all the tiny muscles around the eyes become so soft. No exertion of energy, no need to work. And your own eyeballs just feel so heavy, not twitching or moving, just heavy. And then the forehead is so smooth, and the space between the eyebrows is ironed out, heavy. Scalp is heavy, back of the skull is heavy into the mat. There's nowhere to go and there's nothing to do, but find this stillness. And if you can learn the art of sitting in stillness with yourself, then you can be fully yourself and fully present when you are with others. During this time of uncertainty, of chaos, of fear and panic, might I remind you of my favorite quote by Dr. Wayne Dyer. If you only knew the power that walked in front of you and behind you and to the left and to the right of you, you would never be afraid again. And begin to notice yourself and your breathing. How relaxed you feel. What kinds of thoughts and feelings you are having just now. Maybe you were feeling like everything's going to be okay. Or maybe for a moment you weren't thinking of anything. There was no panic, there was no fear, there was no uncertainty. Just know that is your birthright. To have peace of mind and hope and a radical acceptance that everything is unfolding in a way that's meant just for you. Take a mental snapshot in your mind of how you feel. Kind of thoughts you remember just having. Maybe you tapped into some inner wisdom, some higher intuition, something you might want to journal after your practice. We got into hips, and hips tend to open up a lot of deep-seated emotions. Be open and aware of that. Let your hands be alive with sensation from your awareness. Take your energy to your hands and start to move your fingers one at a time so consciously. Notice how alive they are with energy and sensation. And then slowly take your hands up in front of your face and start to rub them together. And then gently place them 1 inch above your eyes. Feel the heat, the energy, and the own chi in your body. It's flowing so beautifully right now. Start to move your feet, your toes, rotate your ankles. And then draw your knees into your chest. Rock them side to side a little bit. And then rock on to your left side, your moon side, your yin side. Let your left bicep act as a pillow so you can just come into yourself for one more moment, this fetal position. Try not to think about all the things you have to do. Right now there's nothing to do and nowhere to go. Just make it through these next few moments. Stillness, consciousness, of awareness, of presence. These moments are necessary and needed in these times. Take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, press your right hand into the earth. Extend the right leg nice and straight and raise up as if moving through molasses, coming to an easy seated position. Keep your eyes closed and just cross your legs. Sit up nice and straight. And take your hands to your heart center in Anjali Mudra or prayer hands. The chin drop down, a gesture of gratitude towards yourself and the practice that you showed up for today. This yin practice is opening of our awareness of our hips. Something new, hopefully. As always, it's such an honor to guide you through your practice. Thank you for showing up on your mat today. The light in me honors and sees and cherishes and holds sacred space for and loves you. Namaste.